I made something cool. Everybody, welcome back. I'm Izzy, and this is Maker's Playground HQ. I have a super fun product to show you today. This is something I am super excited about and very proud of. Takes the table saw, makes it more functional and much safer to use. That's coming up next. If you're a woodworker and you own a table saw, this is something that you have experienced. I mean, there's just no way around it. Especially like for using your miter gauge right here. If you want to cut some board that's particularly a little bit wider than maybe this distance here, once your miter set gets out here, your miter gauge gets out here, it gets kind of unstable. So it's always a little bit iffy when you're cutting something wider. It's just one of those things that doesn't feel safe. You know, also when you're using jigs and fixtures, for instance, this straight line tapering jig I designed a while back. This thing comes way out here, and it gets, at the end here, it gets a little unwieldy. Then if I want to do something long on here, I want to have this fully retracted, I need a better way of doing this. And here's another one. We're doing a lot of Adirondack chairs lately, so we have these multi-purpose sleds built. This cuts all the angles on one particular leg. And in this case, it's the back leg, so I have, or the front leg, excuse me. So I have this big distance here that I need to put a piece in, and this gets real unstable out here. So that's not safe, it's dangerous. So the simple solution to that is what I'm calling the infeed saddle. So I know most of us have seen infeed tables before. They're usually large and unwieldy and take time to set up. So I wanted to design something that was super fast to use. I could clamp on, take off just within seconds, and be ready to go back to normal operations or throw it back on when I need it. Now with that, I can bring my sleds way out here. I'm safe to put my pieces in without being anywhere near the blade, and it gives me lots of security when I'm doing that. So the list goes on. There's other things I can do with this as well. Like if I've got a big piece of plywood, I'm trying to handle it myself, I can lean it up here and then bring it up and cut it here. It gives me a little bit of extra support in the front instead of if you're doing a full sheet trying to wield it out from the side. I know a lot of guys have been there when you're trying to handle a full sheet or a large sheet of plywood that can be a little unwieldy. This helps with that as well. And I'm really proud to announce that this is our newest product and some product lines that we're coming out with, and it's available on my website right now. So just a little bit more about the infeed saddle, clamp-on infeed saddle. That's what we call it, the clamp-on infeed saddle. We developed the first one that go on table saws with that square tubing, the square tubing for the fence. The second one we're working on and should be ready to go in about a week, week and a half is the one for the DeWalt job site saw, because those things definitely need an infeed table. Those are available for pre-sale on my website, and these are available for sale on my website. So these ones will start shipping as early as Tuesday or Wednesday. We're just waiting for boxes to get in. And then the DeWalt ones, if you want to jump in on that, they're going to be probably shipping, I'd say, the end of next week after we get them all tightened up and start manufacturing those. So those are both available on the website right now. Now, enough with the business. Let's get to the build. Hey everybody, so I want to start by apologizing for the sound today if it's a little poppy. I'm recording with my headset. I don't have my proper audio recording set up because we just moved the office, so please bear with me. So, because this is going to be a whole production project, we started right off with the CNC. The cam clamps we cut out of 1/2-inch Baltic birch on the CNC, and while that was going on, we laminated 2 pieces of 3/4 inch Baltic birch with some black laminate, or Formica if you're old like I am. Now when you're laminating, you want to be very careful that you make sure you get 25 pounds of pressure per square inch down, and to do that we used a J-Brock roller, and then we went back over to the CNC and cut the tabs on all of the cam clamp handles. Now in this case, we're using a 3/8 inch down cut spiral bit to cut a little bit about halfway through the plywood and the laminate, and then we're going to take that bit out and switch it for a compression bit and finish cutting all the way through. That's going to give us a nice clean edge on both the top and the bottom. So with all the parts cut out, it was time to just come back and cut the tabs up and then start cleaning them up. Now to cut the tabs, I use just a flush trim bit in a router, and that makes a really short work of it. The next thing to do was to take all of the saddles that we'd cut out and put the holes in the back. We're putting 6 different holes, and in this case we're putting 3 in each operation for where the inset or the inset thingy's gonna go. Why can't I remember what it's called? So this is one of those things that's a little bit, just takes some time, and in the future we do, these get popular, we sell a bunch of them, I'll set it up so we're doing 3 at a time, instead of just 1 at a time. But this wasn't bad. Just put on some music, kick back, and relaxed and listened to some good music while I ran through and did all of these. Threaded insert, that's what it's called. I knew I'd remember. So after all the holes were cut for the threaded inserts, I took everything over to the spindle sander. Now just a quick tip, if you're sanding, especially in production when you got a lot of parts to do, keep one of those sand savers close by, run it over your spindle sander or sandpaper between each operation, makes the operations go a lot quicker. So this is basically just a lot of rinse and repeat. So this operation was right after we brought it off the CNC machine, and basically from here on out it's all, hand stuff. So with all the sides cleaned up, took it over to the router table. Now with Formica or laminate, you can get some really sharp edges. So we ran around over both the top and the bottom to give it some nice smooth clean edges, nothing that anybody can get cut on or get snagged at. And then from there it's hand sanding, the fun part. So we used a block to get in between on the miter groove, I guess you call it, and then used the sandpaper block also to kind of take the edge off the laminate inside the miter groove, and then any little burrs that were left over, and just cleaned everything up. With the hand sanding done, it was time to switch over to the power sanding and just give everything a nice once over with some 120 grit. Making sure that all the burn marks from the router were gone and that everything was nice and smooth. Because the next step, it's finish. In this case, we're just putting on a single coat of lacquer. Now, the spray booth isn't set up yet, so we're just doing it at the bench with some rattle cans. As we go into production, it'll be all done in the spray booth with the proper sprayer. So, to save you guys from having to watch everything we just did again, we're going to skip ahead. So these are the cam clamps, and basically every operation that you saw on the saddle we did on the cam clamps. So spindle sander, and then the router, and then now we're going over here to our flap sander on the drill press and just giving everything a once over, making sure that there's no burn marks from the router table, and just making sure it's a nice smooth finish before we put on our finish. And again, same thing, just a rattle can of lacquer, and again, with the setup at the spray booth, this is obviously going to take too much time, but this way just everything has got a nice protective coat over it. Now the last step in the actual manufacturing, or the last part that we have to manufacture, is some aluminum angle. This is 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch aluminum angle, and then we're cutting these down to 8 inch long sections. Now this is the part that lips over the tubing and clamps on, and I'll go over that at the end of this video. So each one is just cut on the bandsaw real quick like.
And then it's over to the drill press to drill the 6 holes in the angle iron that will eventually hold this down to the saddle itself. Now in this case it has to be drilled at the proper depth because you need a taper in the aluminum angle iron to let the head of the screw that holds it down kind of hide underneath that, you know, underneath the level of the angle iron. I hope that made sense. So after drilling all the holes, we took the aluminum angle brackets over to the sander where we sanded up the holes that you drilled through, gave the down edge a little bit of a round over, and just cleaned up some of the burrs on them for the next step. So the next step is adding some double-sided tape to the side of the angle iron that has the holes in it. Now this is going to help with mounting this to the saddle for different saws, and that'll make sense here later in the video. I'll show you how you actually install it. So different saws have different size tubing for the fence guide, so we can't install it here. It has to be installed at your place, or you know, on the saw itself, and this way it holds everything really nicely while you do that. So it'll make sense here shortly, I promise. So on top of that, I fiddled with this for a while before I came up with a really good system to make it go faster, but I did. And then on the inside of it, you'll see here in a second, we installed some anti-cline cork rubber. Now the anti-cline cork rubber is literally the best grip stuff I've seen on the market, period, and I'll put a link in the video below to one of Andy's videos talking about it. So we're using that as the grip stuff to really hold this thing in place really nicely.
Alright, so installing this is really super easy. You just take your aluminum bracket, and I'm going to, in this case you could use double-sided tape, some hot glue, whatever. In this case I'm just going to use some painter's tape, double it over, and that's going to hold it in position for me. I'm going to put it on the inside of my fence, up tight against the fence itself. Peel off the double-sided tape. And then take my saddle and center this over the little bracket there. And then I'm going to go ahead and push this tight up against my table saw, or in this case that little bracket that the tubing mounts to. You want to make sure that if you have bolts like on the Grizzly sticking out, you don't want to put it so close that it interferes with those. And I'm just going to press down. And that installs it in the right position. Then I'm going to go ahead and put my screws in. So each infeed saddle comes with the screws that you need to attach to the aluminum bracket. It comes with an insert, a 1/4-inch bolt, a washer, and a bushing. Now the bushing will already be installed in the handle. That goes in this little cam clamp right here, and those will be installed already. So for this I'm going to go ahead and use a centering drill bit on my drill to make sure I get in center in here. Now if you don't have one, just try to keep those drills, the screw holes, as close to center as possible. Now you're going to need to choose one of these holes for your inserts. Now if one of these doesn't work, you can drill a 5/16 hole and just give it a little bit of taper, and that threaded insert will work in it. So in this case, I'm going to put it in this one right here, because that's which one, this is the one that works for saw stop. And then depending on how I put my clamp on, if I want to pull it this way, I'll put it on that way. If I want to pull it the opposite direction this way, which is the way I like, I'm going to put it on this way. So that little belly is facing towards the belly of the saddle. So I'm just going to install my insert. And then my bolt's going to go through the washer and then into the insert. And it's a 1/4-inch bolt, so you'll need a 7/16 spanner wrench or socket, whatever you have. Just enough. And the last thing on the saw stop, you'll add this right here, this last piece of anti-cline cork rubber to it with the double-sided tape, and that should bring you right up to level with the top of your table saw. Now if you have a grizzly or one of the other ones with the square tubes, you may end up having to shim this a little bit up before you do that to get this nice and level, and be sure to check that before you bolt everything down. And just like that, you're good to go. Now how you know if this will work on your saw is pretty simple. From the top of the table saw to the top of the bar, or the fence, the bar that the fence rides on, you need to have at least 3/4 of an inch. Now between the gap here between the bar and the front, you need to have at least 3/16 of an inch. Now the bar thickness this way doesn't matter because you can adjust this all out. And if, let's say, your top is 1 or 1 1/4 inches down from or up from this bar here, you can just add a shim underneath the aluminum bracket to make it work. Okay, so that's what it takes, you know. Not a whole lot of excitement in this particular process, but there's a lot to it to get to this end result and do a really nice quality job. These are available on my website right now, and for the early people, the early birds, the people that start buying, what do you call those? The early buyers? Something. We'll have it on sale for the next couple of weeks. That includes this one and the pre-sale for the job site, the DeWalt job site saw one. That one is also available now. We'll start shipping those in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And if you're interested in jumping in on the pre-sale and the sale for both this one and the DeWalt, head over to the website. Links in the description box below. We really appreciate all your support, and see you in the next video.